The theme of this FWCC section meeting is here for just such a time as this. In holding that thread, one of the title that came to me, sort of the theme that I want to speak to, that I'm led to speak to, is God uses our hands in this time, in every time. Some years ago, my family and I went to Costa Rica over Christmas to be with my extended family. And we had a few days in Monteverde before we met up with my family. And we were staying at a small guest house down the road from the Monteverde Friends School and the meeting. And on Christmas morning, we got up and we knew we were going to go up for worship. But over breakfast, I sat with another guest from the guest house, a man who was there with his wife and their 3 sons. They were Americans that were living in Costa Rica. And it was an interesting conversation. Somehow we got to his belief that every Thanksgiving he's looking for the second coming of John F. Kennedy, who he believes is the Antichrist. And we had a far-ranging conversation, a lot of which was about his sense of the brokenness of the world and the ways in which all of the signs that made it clear that we're in the end times. At the end of the conversation, he asked me what would need to happen for me to reconsider all of the things that he had said. I said, well, probably the second coming of John F. Kennedy. But then I asked him what would help him to reconsider what I had said. And he didn't have an answer. I carried that conversation in my heart as we went up to meeting and sat in worship. And the peace that arose, that I sort of settled into in that worship space, was that he was very aware of the brokenness of the world. And he was yearning for God to step in and fix it. I'm aware of the brokenness of the world. And I believe that God uses our hands in this time and in every time for the repairing of the world, for that healing. So what does it mean for our hands to be used, for us to be ready for our hands to be used? I want to turn to the story of the Good Samaritan. This is a story that most of us are familiar with, in at least the outlines. A story of a man who was traveling and he was set upon by robbers. They beat him up, they robbed him, they left him in the ditch. And a priest came by on the other side of the road and went about his business. And then a Levite passed by, also on the other side of the road, and also went about his business. And then a Samaritan came. And the Samaritan turned to the man in the ditch and went and helped him, put him up on his donkey, took him into the nearest town, paid for him to stay at an inn, bathed his wounds, took care of him. Jesus shares this story along with the query of who is my neighbor, encouraging us to ask in that story, where is the neighbor relationship? As a child, I grew up with that story, meaning if you see someone in the ditch, then you should take care of them. And with a very clear moral code that you need to be helping the people that are suffering. Some years ago, I read a slightly different version. And it's one that weaves together some threads from Ivan Illich and then from some of the writings within liberation theology, where the story is told that maybe that sense of who the neighbor is less about the action and more about the connection and the heart connection. And maybe the Levite and the priest weren't called to come and comfort that man in the ditch, whereas the Samaritan felt God pull on his heart and turn him that direction. What spoke to me so deeply in this other telling of the story is an encouragement that maybe my burden would be lighter if I was listening for when my heart is called in a particular way or to help in a particular situation, instead of feeling I need to be responsible for everything that needs to be done. When we know that God uses our hands, it can be frightening, it can be scary, it can feel huge. But when we remember that perhaps it's only those to whom we're called to where our work is. One of the pieces that speaks so deeply for me in Quakerism is the ways in which listening alone and together, we can come to be clear on where our hearts are called, where it is that God is calling us, and where God hopes to use our hands. Another story that I love around this same topic of maybe we need to be paying more attention to what work is not ours comes from Jan Wood. And many of you may know Jan. She's a pastor in the greater Seattle area. And some years ago, I heard her tell this story, and I'm only sharing it through my memory, so she may share it very differently. But what I remember is that it was a time that her congregation was struggling financially. They had decided to have the congregation help with the maintenance and the cleaning. And Jan was the pastor, and she was feeling she didn't want to not pull her weight. And so she always made sure she signed up to do some of the cleaning, and she often did the bathrooms because she didn't want to avoid the most menial tasks. And as I remember it, one Saturday when her message wasn't quite ready, but she was doing her service and cleaning the bathroom, an older woman came in and said, "Jan, you need to just leave. That if you can't be here with a grateful heart and an open and loving spirit, then you shouldn't be here. Don't sign up for this if you can't do it with a full heart." Just another encouragement to use discernment, to listen together for whether a particular task is ours. Now, we also don't want to miss out, and sometimes it can be scary. It can be we can be worried that maybe we're missing something we should be doing. And I would say that that's part of that Quaker practice of building the skills of listening by ourselves, listening with our community, to be able to better listen on the fly, so to speak, in the moment, so that we can feel that gentle tug in our hearts that pull us toward the work that is ours. Holding that question of who is my neighbor as an open query, not as a should, but as a query to hold deeply. Where is my neighbor? Where is my work? May I be the hands that God needs. I want to close with a scripture using the King James Version because that's what I knew, what I learned as a child. And I'm going to read it because I want to be sure I get it right. It's Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. May we have the faith that God will direct our paths. May we have the faithfulness to have our hands ready and willing to be there when God needs them.